This session is all about banking transformation and the future of FinTech ecosystem collaboration. On the panel today, we have David from AWS, Perminder from Global Solutions. Sorry, you're not from Global Solutions, you're from Mambu. Excuse me. We've got Jill Berry, who's the CEO of AdaTree, and Rich Miller from Zepto. And moderating the panel, we have Manu from ThoughtWorks. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much everybody for joining us for what I promise to be a very interesting discussion. We'll try and keep it as non-controversial as possible, but this is partnerships and about banking, so all topics are controversial. I have with me a very illustrious group of panelists, and I'm really glad to be here with this group. This group interestingly brings in lived real-life experience of working with the large financial services ecosystem as well as leading fintech and technology ecosystems for our market here. We have Jill, CEO of AdaTree, who's been the product and commercial exec at organizations like Volt Bank, at Tyro, at AMP. We've got Perminder, who is the global solutions engineering leader at Mambu, who's won product and technology leadership roles in organizations like Fiserv and Macquarie as well. We've got David, who heads strategy for financial services for Australia and New Zealand for AWS, but who's in his past life done business and technology leadership roles in large financial organizations like NAB. And we have Rich, who is today the CTO of the payment leader Zepto, but has played roles in technology leaderships in organizations like Willow and Prosper and led their growth journeys. I'm really glad to be with this panel here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, man.
In order to set the stage up for this panel, I want to talk about a story, an experience. ThoughtWorks, I lead the financial services ecosystem for ThoughtWorks for Australia and New Zealand. We are a technology consulting and a business consulting player. And we get approached by the big banks and financial services organizations very often when they want to make a change, when they want to deliver new value to customers. We were speaking to this large financial services organization who wanted to respond to a very rapidly moving need for creating a lending product for the solar market and the EV market. Now, if this big bank had done what they normally do, which is work with their legacy ecosystem and the legacy operating model, it sounded like they would have taken 3 years and they would have ended up spending about $45 million of our money. What we got discussing with them was trying to understand the capabilities they were looking at to deliver through this product. So they were looking at capabilities like, ability to create a product that does real-time origination by understanding customer data from the market so that the customer doesn't have to key in. Ability for doing all of this on the cloud so that maintenance costs are better, security is better and assured, and the ability to create a lending product where once a decision is made, pay in and pay out happens real time. Guess what? Those capabilities exist in the market. That is why these players are here. They are commodity capabilities and value differentiating cutting edge capabilities. The bank was spending time evaluating the tech in the capability. But what is proven already in the market is the tech. The challenge is the operating model and the business model behind it. And we couldn't get the banks to move to discuss the operating model and the business model. So what we did with this group of organizations is we managed to pull together a working real-world personal lending product addressing the EV segment in 8 weeks. That's all it took because of the capabilities that AWS bought, because of the capabilities that Zepto bought, AdaTree bought, and Mambu bought. It took a better part of 8 weeks to surface that product, and then through conversations around the operating model and how that became real for the bank could be discussed. In that context, we realized that there are a lot of learnings here and there are a lot of broader questions here that could be addressed in a larger forum, which is why we are all on this panel today. To do a better job at introducing their capabilities and talk about what are the special areas where true partnerships could help the financial services ecosystem and customers, maybe I can start with the first question with this context that I've painted. maybe I'll start with you, David, and we can proceed down that line. I would love for you to introduce your organization maybe briefly, and maybe also talk about the trends that your organization is focusing on, the key areas that you are enabling for the financial services ecosystem, and how you see that using those differentiated areas, the ecosystem could serve the customer better.
Sure, thank you, Mano. So David Fodor from Amazon Web Services, part of the financial services team based here in Melbourne. What are we doing? Look, basically when I talk about what we do in the market, we split our operations, or the way we think about it, into two halves. One is how we help organisations run their business, and the other is how we help organisations change their business. And I think one thing, when I put everything aside and think about what we do best, we always come back to we help organisations gain access to new technology as soon as it comes to market. So it's really about democratisation of software at the end of the day. Yes, we have a broad platform of services that helps organisations with their scalability, with their cost effectiveness, with their resilience, all that good stuff. But the more important thing is helping them be agile and helping them, in what is extremely topical today, access new technology like artificial intelligence. That's where really it's all happening. Without a platform that allows you, through a marketplace of lots and lots of services, lots of third-party services, lots of partnerships, it's really actually hard to find that pathway to adoption of new technology as it comes onto the market. So when I step back and think about everything that we do, generally that's where I think we find that sweet spot. It's democratising access to software, not just for the big players, but for all players.
Thank you so much. Parminder?
Yep, so I'm from Mambu. So Mambu is a cloud banking platform, and we're really challenging the definition of what core banking is in the market and what customers should expect from their core. So in terms of some of the things that we do, obviously from a more visible standpoint, is we're continually adding new features to be able to support retail and SME lending and deposit products. But we're also doing things behind the scenes, which are not the things that you probably look at, is in terms of improving the hosting and security and throughput of what we can support, because we, as a SaaS, we do support over 250 customers, over 400 installations at any given time. So we are the back end for all those institutions, and we are constantly improving what we can do there. And then we are also making it easy for our customers to connect us with other ecosystem providers, such as the ones here, as well as also changing the way they can procure Mambu by being on the CSP marketplaces, including AWS, where they can retire their consumption credits on the use of Mambu through their relationship, and really expand on how they can be cost effective with the CSPs.
Thank you. Jill.
Cool. Thanks, Manu. Yeah, I'm Jill Berry, CEO of AdaTree. So AdaTree is a turnkey platform for companies who want to access CDR data. Any data source, any industry, we're the only ones that are connected to all of them. So essentially, whatever the use case is, we can really accommodate for it, whether companies want to be accredited themselves, want to be a representative, a trusted advisor, you name it, we accommodate for it. So when Manu was like, Manu and Ian were like, all right, so we're thinking about a proof of concept, and I was like, well, if you want to partner with CDR, we're in. Like, I didn't even need to hear it. I mean, I'm interested in it because I'm a product person, but it just works. So I was pretty excited to be part of it, but we're essentially the poles and wires of the CDR. So we like to be basically just a background implementation detail, getting all of the data for a use case in real time from all of the different data holders in the ecosystem.
Thank you. Rich.
Thanks, Manu, and good afternoon. So Zepto is a real-time account-to-account payment solution for businesses. We're all about payments, specifically account-to-account payments, and we're laser-focused on real-time and providing great customer experiences through that. Our vision is a simple one: it's a better way to pay. Our mission is powering the movement of value through the economy, and through that driving great customer experiences. And if you'll indulge me a quick personal example that happened to me last week, Manu. My daughter, 20 years old at uni, decided she wanted to invest some money in a fund. We sat down together. She'd done a research. She chose a large global investment management company. We sat down, and on the website it said, get started in 10 minutes. It was a pretty slick experience. Within 6 minutes, she was signed up. She had her bank account connected. AML, CTF, all that kind of stuff was done and dusted. And then she hit the Invest Now button. And when she hit the Invest Now button, she was taken to a page that said, to transfer us your funds, you've got one of 3 ways to do it. Firstly, you can send it to via a BSBN account number, and we'll get the funds in 1 to 2 days. Or you can go via BPay, 1 to 2 days. And the third option was we'll direct debit your account, and that's going to take 2 to 4 days. And she looked at me, said something which I don't want to mention here, and literally walked away. And to this day, I don't think this morning I checked, she hadn't actually completed that transaction, right? The customer experience was absolutely brilliant up to that point of payment, and then it fell down. There was an audible thud as the customer experience ended. So that's what we're focused on changing those, that customer experience around paying. She wanted to move money instantly, and I'm pretty sure that merchant or that investment company wanted to get the funds, in fact, instantly or at all.
That's a really interesting story. We have spoken about why it would make sense to partner in this ecosystem to deliver true value to the end customer quickly and safely and securely. Maybe I'll start the next question with you, David. When we were discussing with this large financial organization that I spoke about, it was apparent that partnership was not the first thing in their mind. What do you think? What are the conditions that need to be true for a large financial institution to successfully engage in a partnership, and maybe even stretch that a little bit more and say a multi-vendor partnership or a multi-player partnership?
Yeah, so I've been on both sides of the fence. I spent 20 years in banking with one of the big 4 here, based in Melbourne. So there's only 2 choices there. So in my experience of working in that paradigm, we were very much of the buying posture where we would go traditionally with one of the big technology providers, and we would ask them to provide an end-to-end solution, right? Now, a lot's changed since then. I think that there's been a rapid evolution of much better microservice architecture, a much better ecosystem of API, those two coming together on top of platforms like ours that provide a marketplace of many, many different SaaS vendors, means that you can stitch together effectively what we describe as a SaaS mesh extremely quickly and extremely efficiently, with the right architecture, meaning that security is at the forefront, data security is always there, and it makes that ecosystem real very quickly, versus my experience in the old paradigm of taking a couple of years to build a solution that's pretty much custom built for the enterprise. That's the new world. I think we're seeing progressively organisations move towards that. Having said that, we still work with a lot of large organisations that still have that very build-orientated proprietary solution type of mindset going in. Having said that, across the lower tier 2, tier 3 players in the market, and certainly into the fintech ecosystem, it's all about partnership. It's all about how do we bring together the best of breed solutions across the value chain. Absolutely. And fortunately, is a platform that's enabling that to happen.
Very interesting. Parminder, as we move on to you for the same question, I understand that the question takes a much larger weight when it comes with the loaded word core banking. How does the procurement conversation look like today, and how should it change?
Well, I mean, it depends on the type of institution, right? And obviously, the larger the institution, the more procurement gets involved. Unfortunately, with procurement and core banking, there is, an existing definition of what it is, and therefore all providers are actually compared against a criteria that may not actually reflect what the bank or financial institution requires today. So that is the unfortunate side of the procurement. But that's where we need to work with the business and the technology areas of the bank to really challenge what they're trying to do, and get down to the nuts and bolts of what they need versus what they could have from a core. And that's where we work with a lot of banks to really understand what is MVP, and getting there. The time to revenue, the time to getting that MVP together is critical, because yes, you can analyze to the nth degree and not do anything 2 to 3 years later, or you can deliver something within 9 months, and iterate on that to then get the full functionality that you need. Because at the outset, or when you're doing an RFP, you also that doesn't factor in how the market will change, how your consumers will change, and the availability of other ecosystem providers, or CDR, right? So yeah, it is a challenge that we do need to work through, but I think the benefits and the products that the end consumer will get as a result of it is way worth the effort.
What do you think it changes, Jill, when it comes to areas like open banking?
Yeah, well, I guess of course, the procurement's quite challenging, and especially for banks, because they still have to show, that they're meeting the same prudential standards, and that, that you're, especially if you're accessing production information and storing it, well, how do you meet it as well? I think it WER helps out in kind of like 2 different ways. One, we're regulated, so instead of them being like, hi, show us your SOC 2 type 2 and all these different things, we're like, here's our accreditation. You can go to the website, and if you want, you can see our 25 bank grade policies. Oh, how do we know where it's bank grade? Because we've helped build 2 banks and been with the APRA technology teams for that. That's a pretty rare experience. Was it a fun one? I don't know. We're not going to do that again. But I think that since like my team has the experience of bank building, we've gone into procurement and be like, we know what questions you're going to ask, so here's our information security pack. And whether you're looking at a small credit union or a big 4, they essentially have the same principles on what to do. And just about 2 years ago, we fell into this really interesting deal where we basically, from literally the first inquiry from one bank to about 7 weeks later, we signed 26 ADIs. And I remember actually AWS, your Greenfield team, you're like, they don't talk to us. How did you guys do this? I'm like, it's basically just solving a very, very clear problem for them, doing it in a respectful way with negotiating. And also we ended up doing a group deal, which I didn't realize was a thing until they asked for one. So we're like, cool, one set of T's and C's, one price, one start date, one end date, and yeah, so things that you don't learn in business school, you can do that. But I think that's been helpful for us, and then it also builds a credibility when other banks talk to us. We're like, well, we've been through the procurement process 26 times. What's another one as well? Even though we're going through a procurement process right now, and how many times have I said, oh, that procurement process is done, but we'll just deal with that one later.
Very interesting. I see Zepto doing the same, recently announcing very large deals with very large enterprises. How does this differ in your world?
I think, Manu, it also reflects the kind of change in the business landscape towards SaaS-based, more agile, more efficient, innovative kind of solutions that can be brought to market really quickly and highly scalably, right? And I think there's different types of these SaaS vendors. There's obviously the niche vendor, the ones that focus on one thing and do one thing alone. They spend all their energy working on that. So Zepto focuses on real-time payments. And then you get the other kind of SaaS providers, the larger kind of the platforms, the AWSs of the world, which have got significant scale and investment in that organizations couldn't possibly match. I think referring to what Jill spoke about in terms of credibility, also as the first non-bank company to obtain an ADR, as the first non-bank company to become a connected institution with NPP, ISO 27001, the same story. You have a lot of credibility in the marketplace. And I think the the procurement shift, there's a shift from more transactional based style of procurement to much more ongoing strategic partnerships. And that's, I guess, the change that we're seeing.
It's really interesting. As we have seen this conversation evolve, having been a part of Intersekt over the last few years, I think I've clearly noticed a shift in the whole competition conversation to truly becoming cooperation and truly becoming for the betterment of the customer ecosystem. But having said that, I think there are some obvious questions which still are not clearly addressed. Things like customer ownership, for instance. Maybe I'll start with you, Jill, this time. Are there specific pitfalls to avoid when setting this partnership successfully? And not just when starting the partnership, but when living a partnership over a period of time between these large enterprises. You spoke about order of magnitudes complexity when it is one to many and many relationships being set up at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, and I think that we look at it from a number of different views. But like sometimes we just contract directly with someone, or it's a question of are we reselling someone or is someone reselling us? Obviously once it gets into sub-licensing, it gets much more complicated. But I think that instead of just looking at, well, who owns the customer, we look at it kind of like from 3 point of views, just because we love this swim lane approach. Just like what Rich said, we're really good at what we do. And if someone says, hey, I want an instant loan affordability report, I want real-time payments, I want this, we're like, great. We don't do that, but we know someone who does, and we can play really well. So if someone happens to be like, all right, well, I do that well, I think I might want to replicate you in the future as well. I'm not going to partner with you, but thank you for being so upfront about that. So we just like to be really clear about what we're both good at so we can play together and also win together. So when we go to market, we like to be clear about who has a regulatory relationship with the customer, because we might say, oh, yes, you have the commercial relationship. That's totally fine. And whether we sub-license or bill accordingly, it doesn't have to be directly with them. But since CDR is so regulated, who has a regulatory relationship and also who has a technology relationship? Because we might integrate to someone and a customer integrates to us, but they might have a contract with someone else. So it gets a little bit complicated, but ultimately we're not precious whatsoever, because it's definitely not one size fits all, at least in our space.
Makes sense. In the payment space, I'm assuming this is interlaced with complexity of legacy payment ecosystem rails and legacy, sort of payment mechanisms. What are the pitfalls that you've seen should be avoided when you're looking at building innovation in that space?
Well, just talking about cooperation first, all of the industry players in our industry, we're trying to solve a lot of the same challenges. We're trying to solve older antiquated legal and regulatory issues, customer adoption, fraud and scams. So it makes sense as an industry to work together on a number of those initiatives, which we do. So we work with the larger banks, we work with other fintechs to try and solve those particular issues. And then, Manu, when it comes to, you spoke about customer ownership. We're really not fussed about customer ownership. We care about value creation through partners and with partners. Right, and some good examples here. Like if you take, we work with WPay, right? So WPay, we provide them with the ability to provide real-time and pay-to capabilities to Woolworths, to Dan Murphy's, and so on and so forth, Big W. So, we don't really own those end customers at all, but we're providing capabilities to allow WPay to provide choice to their customers, and the same goes for another one, OzEddy, a name not many people would know about, but OzEddy is really powering a lot of the large superannuation firms in this country. Same story, we're providing them the capability to provide real-time payments to those super companies. So, not really about customer ownership at all, more about value creation through the chain.
Parminder, is this in the core space? It's even harder to talk about what not to do, because anything that shouldn't be done should never even be considered, because it's so close to the heart of an organization. Have you seen obvious conversations that should change?
So if financial institutions are all at various stages of acceptance of things like SaaS and ecosystems, so it depends on the organization what needs to change, right? Everyone's on their own path, and so we need to be flexible to support them with their path. So it might be that in one organization they need to change in terms of how they approach cloud in general, and in another organization might be that they still want the end-to-end. So we need to change in terms of our partnership agreement with the SIs that they chose, right? And from that perspective, we are flexible and we're willing to look at different partnership models with our ecosystem brothers and sisters, as well as with the bank themselves or the lender, right? So there are many partnerships, and there are different ways that we can help each other. So there's not one size fits all, and obviously the things that need to change will vary by the customer.
Maybe that ties me nicely into the last question for the panel. I think we've got about 2 minutes left. We've spoken about why organizations should partner with each other to deliver better value to the ecosystem, but are there areas where there should not be partnership? Should the financial services ecosystems own their fate in certain areas? What are those conditions? Does the life cycle cost of a feature play into this? Is regulation a constraint? Is there a change in the regulation that needs to be true if these partnerships were to be taken or avoided? I'll probably start with you, David, and move down the line.
Yeah, with 429, let's not get into regulation too much. There's lots and lots of things that provide significant barriers to us today. If you take Jill's world of CDR, there's some really two main things that really need to change from the regulatory posture with the $80 odd million that they've got to throw at it. One being the quality of the data that's in the ecosystem today, and the other is just pushing hard on the action orientation nature of the use cases. But beyond that, in our world, the most challenging new regulation that's going to come down the tree in the next 18 months is going to be around the CPS 230 requirements, which means that consumers of our sorts of services need to be aware of not just what we do, but fourth parties such as the organisations that build on our platform and provide their software through our services as well. So that's going to be a challenge until the 2025 switch on date, that we're going to be working hard with our customers and the ecosystem that sit around it to make sure that it's a smooth, seamless transition.
Would you like to add anything, Jill, Parminder?
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. It's like I like it when companies or FIs are really upfront about like what they want to own and what they don't want to own. Obviously, when you talk to a tech teams want to build, and they're like, well, why can't I build this? And then it's, well, sure, you can build anything. It probably just cost you a lot more money, time, and effort. But it's a question of, well, what's the opportunity cost? I love it when they're just like, we really want to have a native CX, and we don't want to white label that for you, and we'll use your design library, and we want to own this, but but just having that, I guess, that decision, that just being like, we're happy to outsource this, and we want to have this in house, and I guess it's easy with the smaller credit unions when we're like, well, how can we deliver loan transformation for you without writing a line of code? They don't have the capacity to do that. It's obviously much harder with larger organizations, and there's lots of people and egos involved, but that's a process.
Rich, parting words on the topic?
At 4:30? I was going to say, just in regulation, if they were to invest in things, it would be, for me, three things. Clearer guidance, better education for themselves in terms of technology, keeping up to date with things like AI, etc., and better industry collaboration. So that we're all heading, so we're reducing regulatory risk together. We're all heading down the same path. That's as quickly as I can say it in 30 seconds.
Parminder, 2 words.
I would love to help them, but I would love to see financial institutions really challenge the regulator and open that dialogue and include the fintechs with them in that dialogue. The cost of inaction is actually really high, but it's not quantified, and we would really want to compel everyone to challenge so that there is actual action that occurs.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your candor and being so kind to join us, and thank you all for joining us as well.